PLD Projects presents Holy Snokes, a Star Wars podcast featuring PLD and Matty Gunner. May the Force be with you, always. Chewie, we're home.
It's like we never left.
What is happening, everybody? It's great to see you. Welcome to PLD Projects. Welcome to the debut episode of Holy Snokes, a Star Wars podcast. This has been a long time coming. Maddie, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. First off, can we shout out the legend that is David B for that theme music? Forever proving that I will never be half the caliber of musician that he is, because I tried, failed miserably, and then David B just comes in with this theme song and absolutely knocks it out the park. And I'm just like, well, I never have to do that ever again.
I can't say that because I never actually even got to listen to your attempts.
It was not good.
I will believe you.
Not good.
I will believe it because John Williams is a maestro. It's hard to even get like in that ballpark, so I understand how difficult a task it was. I will also though shout out the great David B. Great intro. I'd like to also shout out Jacob Patrick. Great artwork that he gives us. But this is a great time to be a Star Wars podcaster. It's my blood. It's in my history, really, honestly. I never came to the YouTube space. The reason why I came to the YouTube space was back in the day, I fell in love with when Disney bought Lucasfilm. I got into Jedi Council with Christian Harloff and Ken Knapsack and everything else down to the day. And all the way through to the day where I actually worked with Christian on the big thing. And even today with the Sith Council podcast. So I've been doing Star Wars forever. And then we talk about this channel. This is my third go around as a Star Wars podcast. I just can't quit it. I had PLD 1138, which was okay, but I mean, it was definitely my beginnings, and I'm glad I left it behind now. I had some growing pains. We, of course, tried Scoundrels of the Force for a while before we wanted to expand out because I didn't have time. I could only do one.
You sold the name.
And then I did sell the name. Yes, that's true. This is why we are Holy Snokes, a Star Wars podcast instead now for our third go around. But our third go around is here. I just can't quit. We can't stop talking Star Wars.
And when we do talk Star Wars, you and I, it's always a very positive experience. It's always a very good, healthy conversation. We're not picking at each other's heels about little things. Yeah, we have like slight disagreements, but when you and I talk, this is why I enjoy talking to you about Star Wars, because you understand my perspective, where I'm coming from, and the same vice versa. So we can, we may not always agree on certain things, we still can talk like adults.
Absolutely. And you know what? We also don't have to be 100% like loving everything. We get that. Some things are for some people, other things are for other people, and that's perfectly fine. But we want to remain positive. That's one thing about the Star Wars space is that we do notice, I don't want to talk about too much of the elephant in the room, but there is a lot of negativity around. There's a lot of like clickbaity kind of thing where like it just
lets there's a few screws loose.
Yeah, it's like I see what you did there. But we want to remain positive. We want to remain positive with our like some of our friends in the space that we really kind of try to build out that positivity around Star Wars. People like the aforementioned Scoundrels Inc., even though they stole our name. I didn't steal it. I sold it. So it's true. Scoundrels Inc.
Love those guys.
I love those guys. They're welcome anytime. Of course, we got the Resistance broadcast. We got Force Center with the great Ken Knapsack and Joseph Scrimshaw and Jennifer Landa. And of course, Star Wars Explained, Alex Damon, Molly Damon. This is a great crew of people to be associated with in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, y'all had ties with the movie Trivia Showdown, but it kind of created this great Star Wars bond of just positive energy, positive force. Let's talk about our love for Star Wars, our love for the characters, the themes. I'm just glad to have you on board for that, Matty.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to do this, especially because where I come from in like the alternative music culture, you have podcasts like Thank the Maker, which is Nick from Bayside, Adam from Story of the Year, Ryan from Yellow Card. These guys in bands that I grew up listening to also have a Star Wars podcast. And, you know, you guys like the Dano Channel, Princess and the Scoundrel, all super positive. They have their own lanes, but they're also, the main thing is a love for Star Wars and a healthy, positive conversation.
That's the best thing we can do. With Celebration coming up in April, you're going to be going there. I wish I was going
London,
there.
baby.
London, baby. London calling. Let's just celebrate Star Wars. This is the show. What's going to do? We're going to have a lot of reviews to let you know how this is going to work. We're going to review everything that comes out on film and TV side the day it happens. Like Bad Batch Season 2 premiere came out last night or early this morning is where we're going to have a breakdown by PLD project standards, like kind of like class action. We're going to break it down using segments, using different select
custom-made
categories, as you will. We're doing that, and we'll do that for Mandalorian when those come out. Most likely, when at the point where Bad Batch and Mandalorian have episodes in the same day, we probably actually have bonus episodes that week to try to break it down because we want to make sure we give everything its due that we can. But we're going to break down some of the books and games and stuff. Maddie is planning to play Jedi Survivor when it comes out, maybe streaming that live here. We try to give everything its due, even if I'm not as much into the books. I don't do games anymore. I found out when I do a game, I used to play Latra, Lord of the Rings Online, and I just sunk me in so hardcore that like if I tried to do a game today, I'd get sunk in. I just don't have time to get sunk in that way. It's for my own sanity. I'm like a drug addict. I just get that hit. I keep going back. So I stepped away. I am now in Gamers Anonymous, the 12-step program. I don't want to slip back. But Maddie will take that up. But we'll also talk books and comics as we read them. I'm not quite as quick about them, so it might take a little while to do those, but we will talk about everything in canon. And hell, sometimes we might even go back into Legends depending on what's going on. We have everything in the galaxy is at our fingertips.
I love the Legends stuff, so when we get to do stuff like that, we're gonna have some fun with that.
Oh yeah, already got some segments planned out for some of these quote unquote slower days we get. Beyond the reviews, we'll also obviously talk about Star Wars news going on. Any kind of breaking news that comes in, we're going to talk about it. I don't want to talk about. We're not going to be ones who are going to share screen leaks, things like that nature. I don't want to get into that kind of thing. I want to talk mostly about basically released trades, like respected trades. I'm not saying I'm not going to go into a rumor or two. In fact, there's one rumor today I want to discuss during our segments, or whatever. But we're always going to say at the top, this is a verified source as far as we can know. This is not a verified source. This is a rumor. We have fun with it. I get tired and I get weary of things getting leaked to the press or to the fans, and everybody all of a sudden tell me this is fact. This is the way it's happening. This is what's going on. And then when it doesn't happen, they start blaming Lucasfilm, start blaming Star Wars. But they didn't say anything in the first place. So why are you blaming them? So I feel like that's the way we got to go. And I'm happy I want to be responsible about our news.
If anyone leaks anything about the Acolyte, I reserve my legally given right to kick you in the leg.
That's fair. I mean, they have released some Acolyte set photos and stuff.
I haven't looked at it. I did la 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 la.
Oh, I've done the same thing. I decided not to. And I want to discuss. It's funny. I feel like an old man. Back in my 20s, I used to be a big spoiler hound for like the prequel trilogy that came out. I was involved with Fat2Media Site, which we actually were probably our best known thing about us was that we were the first ones to put together a episode 3 timeline of all the leaks. So we put it in one point. We basically almost had the whole movie out before it came out for the most part. Little one or two things off, but for the most part, it was spot on. Nowadays, that's just not me. I want to wait and bring it, take it in as the artist has wanted to put it in my eyeballs. I want to see it that way. So that's what we're going to do here. But this week, of course, is the Star Wars Bad Batch Season 2 premiere. It's back, baby. I have been so excited about this. I did first season rewatch last week, and I realized I love the show. This is my wife's actually favorite Star Wars TV show.
Wow.
Yeah, right? You don't hear that from many people. This is the one. I'm like, oh, this is the one. I love the Bad Batch, is what she said. Okay, I'm good for that. I like that. In fact, it makes it better for me. I like being able to get to enjoy something so much with her. But like I said, I did the rewatch, and I realized that I fell even more in love with it the second time through. I never watched it more than once. The first time I watched it, I never went back. I went back to Clone Wars. I'm doing a Clone Wars rewatch still with my son. I'm doing other things. They're going to go into Rebels. I've done a Rebels rewatch before. I never did a Bad Batch rewatch. I loved it more the second time. I'm all in now. So when this season 2 premiere came up, I was so excited about this. I took the night off of work. I just stayed up and just sat in front of the TV waiting.
I just noticed that because when you messaged me this morning, because I watched it as soon as it dropped. When you messaged me, I was like, "What the hell? Paul's never awake to watch Star Wars. Like he's never waits up to watch it." So I was pleasantly surprised that you stayed awake to watch it.
Well, it wasn't even staying awake. I'm usually working, so I usually can't really watch it then. I can't do it, or I can't talk about it then, or whatever. So you have to wait. I have to wait and then really dig in the next morning. But we will get there. Let's talk about some news and what we want to talk about news-wise. There were a couple of news pieces that dropped, and one specifically that I wanted to touch base on. More importantly, it seemed like a good beginning point for our show. There was a couple of news pieces last week, and one was that Disney was going to unleash its Star Wars in 2023 as far as film and a TV goes. And I'm excited to get into that. And we have one more piece of rumor I want to talk about soon by the end of that. But let's start with that Star Wars in 2023 campaign. I'm not, again, this is not something that came from like Lucasfilm or Disney itself, as far as I can tell. If it did, I couldn't really find it. But I did find it from some very, shall we say, trustworthy sources, if you will, trustworthy sources. So I think we can say that if on the scale of like 0 to 11 or 1 to 11, because we always go to 11 on PLD projects, I would trust this with a very rating of about 8.5.
Ooh.
So I think this is going to happen. This sounds very right.
Ooh.
So what we got here is we got obviously the Bad Batch season 2. We're not going to talk about that because we're going to get into that as far as our review. But coming up next, beyond that, we have the Mandalorian season 3. Now that's supposed to come out March 1st of 2023. The journeys of the Mandalorian through Star Wars Galaxy continue once a lone bounty hunter, Din Djarin, is reunited with Grogu. Meanwhile, the New Republic struggles to lead the galaxy away from its dark history. The Mandalorian will cross paths with old allies and make new enemies as he and Grogu continue their journey together. And that is the summary that we were given. Let's talk about Mando season 3. Where are you at on that? Are you excited? Are you more excited? Like as far as where is this on your anticipation scale?
This is very, very high up there for me because I was at Celebration. I got to see the extended trailer that you guys have in the general public haven't seen everything yet that was shown.
Oof, can't wait.
There's the whole rumor that they're going to be dropping another trailer on Christmas. No, so that would have already happened. So it didn't happen. Duh. I'm very much like, okay, now we're building up towards where I feel like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are like looking for this character to end up, which if you go all the way back to when Paul and I used to guest on the Holocron back in the day, say back in the day, that was like 2 years ago, they always talked about that end game level event. And I think now is when we built up Din. We know where we know what he is as a character. We've got Grogu. So now let's start to push him towards that end game level event, which I think is going to be him ascending the throne of Mandalore and having to fight for it.
That's an interesting point you bring up. I think that we do have the large event that's been talked about for a while. Obviously, Ahsoka is a part of that. That's what they've said. They kind of tied it to Ahsoka. They were tying in the Rangers of the Republic show that got canned after the issues or whatever. That's not happening now. But I've also heard that Skeleton Crew is taking place at the same time, same era. So I wonder if that's going to be a part of it or not. I kind of think it might be. But they're all coming out this season, or this year rather. And I feel like they might all be tying together now. This might be the time they actually started building up a bigger event quickly. We've taken our time with Din, like you said. We got through season 1, season 2, season 2.5.
I'm so glad you said that. I thought about it. I was like, nope, don't do it.
It's actually not a negative. I love the Book of Boba Fett, by the way. I want that out there. I think the Book of Boba Fett is a phenomenal piece of work overall. I get why some people weren't as into it as others. I get why some people maybe said it was a slow burn, whatever. I really enjoyed getting into knowing the Tusken Raiders more, getting the deep dive into those, getting that whole aspect of it, getting to know Black Chrysanthemum a little bit. Those
So
touches. I mean, the only thing legitimately I would call 2.5 is the fact that we had that Grogu and Luke moment and everything else. Which is an interesting ploy they took, because we ended season 2 with Mandalorian, with obviously Grogu going off with Luke. Now we're going to begin season 3, and Grogu and Din are back together. So I guess it was an interesting way to do that in an off-season kind of way. But some people had a problem with that as well. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's nice, and I think it gives Mandalorian season 3 the time it needs to get to where it's going. All right, we had the brief dalliance with Luke. Now we get to see Din and Grogu together. We have a limited amount of episodes. I don't know how many episodes I really wanted to have Din and Grogu apart while all this went down, until Din and Grogu get back together, because that's the heart of the show, is when they're together. Whether it was Din getting Grogu back to his people, as the idea was in the beginning, or now it's Grogu getting Din back to his people, so to speak. Maybe it's a little reverse storytelling, possibly. And of course, with Ahsoka thrown in there, we're going to talk about that. Ahsoka is talking about Thrawn possibly, and that whole Rebels 2.0 thing. So what does the event have in mind? Is the event a retaking of Mandalore, or is the retaking of Mandalore more of a Mandalorian thing, and the final arc is a everybody against Thrawn type thing? I don't know. A lot of possibilities.
I think so. I think when I talked about it the first time, I think I said like Thrawn has control of Mandalore, or Mandalorian space, and the big event is going to be the Mandalorians and Ahsoka in the fight to regain it from Thrawn. So, dude, even the thought of Thrawn holding the Darksaber. Okay, that's pure speculation. We speculate responsibly here, but just like knowing that all these things are coming together, there's like images like that get put in my head, and I'm just like, we could see some really great stuff.
Right. That'd be fun. That would be fun. I mean, I don't want to skip too far ahead too fast. Moff Gideon is going to be a big part of season 3, from what Giancarlo Esposito has said.
I love Giancarlo.
I love him as well.
He gives up so much information that he's just like, give it. Come on. Keep talking.
He just doesn't give a whatever. You know what I'm saying? But he did say he does play a big part. He starts off in prison, obviously, as we saw at the end of season 2. But obviously he's going to make his way out eventually, and we're going to see another standoff there, because he wants the Darksaber back. I think he wants to be a Mandalorian, it feels like, in a way. So interesting to see where all that's going to come together. Who? That's why I think we don't see Thrawn until Ahsoka, and then I think that we end I think Mandalorian season 2 might end with Din probably having the Darksaber, or maybe Thrawn does make a quick appearance and he has the Darksaber. I don't know. It's gonna be. I don't want to go too far into it. I want to see. I want to wait. Like I said, wait and see. Wait and see. But I'm very excited about Mandalorian, especially because I like the idea of the reverse storytelling. Because Din and Grogu are always at the heart of that show, and their familiar relationship. And now we get to see the reverse. We get to see Grogu helping Din discover who he is, because that's always been kind of in the background, right? Din is been from a specific sect of Mandalorians who are very unique, but he's also almost like a child himself in the wilderness. He was shocked to find Mandalorians who did take their helmet off, things of that nature. He's discovering so much out there in the world. So even though, or in the galaxy, I should say. So while he's a guy who knows what he's doing in the bounty hunting field, I think there's a lot he has to learn about his own past and where that takes place. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Any last word about the Mandalorian? Anything you want to see or you don't want to see?
I can't wait for that. There's that shot of him flying in on the N1, and you see the dome city that's been completely destroyed. I just can't wait to see like shots like that.
Yeah, I can't wait either. One thing I will throw out there: what do I want to see? What do I want to see more than anything else?
Insolence! We are pirates! We don't even know what that means!
That's right. Hondo Watch has begun. You get used to seeing Hondo on this show. We are big fans of Hondo and Nanka, and we want to see him come to live action. We want to see him come back to the Bad Batch. We want to see him come back to every possible Star Wars media possible.
So you might ask the question of, who wants to see Hondo?
Who wants to see Hondo? Everybody wants to see Hondo. Isn't that true? Oh man. But okay. Let's move on then to our next segment. Our next segment of news. We have Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures also coming out in the spring of 2023, reportedly. Set during the High Republic era, Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures follows younglings as they study the ways of the Force and learn valuable skills needed to become Jedi: compassion, self-discipline, teamwork, patience, and friendship. It will be the first full-length animated Star Wars series created for preschoolers. Okay, we are obviously not the intended audience,
Nope.
although sometimes mentally I do feel that young. Mentally only, though. Physically, I'm well. I feel like twice my
I
age.
feel you there.
But I do think it's notable to discuss a few things about it. We're not going to cover it on the show, obviously. I'm beyond like maybe we might mention it. So we're not going to have a deep breakdown. It's not a show that needs a deep breakdown. This feels like it's Sesame Street in space. But at the same time, it's kind of nice that Star Wars is doing this. It breaks down to a new audience again. It's always great to get Star Wars to a new audience, a younger audience. I mean, if you remember, I remember the prequels coming out, and the prequels were divisive, and a lot of the OT fans didn't like it because it was too young, too kiddie. Nowadays, here we are, a generation later. The prequels are well loved by that group of kids, people who were kids the time it came out. And I think some people in my age have started to understand. Like I always kind of like the prequels. I had no problem with the prequels, but I think some people are finally understanding the fact that, you know what, it's okay to have kiddie things at times and moments that are kiddie things. It just brings generations together on a basis. We have Star Wars is a big enough galaxy. There's enough things for everybody.
Yeah.
So there's that. The other thing I will bring up that this is the first time we're getting on screen, I believe, I'm pretty sure the first time we're getting on screen any depiction of the High Republic.
Yeah.
So I mean, like
Yeah.
that is notable in and of itself. Obviously, High Republic, if you don't know, is the big multimedia, mostly novel campaign that Star Wars has done in the novels, set way before the Phantom Menace, hundreds of years, where the Jedi were at their peak at that time. The Republic was at its peak. That's why it's called the High Republic. It's the better part of the Republic, so to speak. We haven't had that on screen yet, but we are going to have that on screen now. Even if it's in a kiddie format. It's going to be interesting to say.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, like all I loved was Star Wars and music where people yelled angrily at me. And I was bullied a lot, made fun of a lot for liking things like that. So while it may not be for us, we need to be like vigilant in like how we talk about these things, because the internet is very readily available for young people. So if it's like a young person to come on, see, oh, there's a Star Wars show. Oh, it's talking about that thing I like. Oh, they're crapping on it. Oh,
Yeah.
it's not the way that
Right.
that this is not the way.
This is not the way. And you know what? It's not, like I said just before we started, this is not meant for us, and that's okay. It's okay. And if you love it and you're coming watching the show as a kid, you know, I'm sorry if I swore. I don't mean to. I'm an older man who does it on occasion. I try to hold myself back on this show specifically. But I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it brings you into a new galaxy far, far away that it will take your imagination and run with it, because it did me when I was a young kid, when I was 4. I first saw Empire Strikes Back in the theaters. It was my first movie that I ever got to see in the theaters. So yeah, I love Star Wars for that. I hope you love it too, in any form, any format possible. So yeah, you have a safe space here for sure. All right, let's move on to the next debut of something coming out in 2023. We do have the second season of Star Wars Visions coming out in the spring of 2023. There's a lot set for spring at this point, which is amazing. The official synopsis that we were given, again, I don't see it on StarWars.com, so I don't know exactly how official it could really be, but I trust the source. Star Wars Visions is an animated anthology series featuring celebratory expressions of Star Wars storytelling. 7 Japanese anime studios brought their unique talents in respective to Star Wars Visions Volume 1. Launching in 2023, Volume 2 will feature stories from creative teams from Chile, France, Japan, India, Ireland, Spain, South Africa, South Korea, the UK, and the US to showcase the incredible animation happening across each country and culture through the mythos of Star Wars. What are your thoughts about hearing that? And did you like Vision season 1? What are your
I
thoughts?
did. I really enjoy some. I'm not a massive anime fan. I like the basics like Death Note, Naruto, Spirit
Right.
Away, Dragon Ball Z. Like I'm a very surface level anime fan. So I think it was very cool for Star Wars to kind of push into that territory and start doing things differently. I'm curious to see different animation styles from different countries. Like animation from the UK. What are we going to get? Like Tintin in Star Wars? Are we going to get like Mr. Bean adventures in Star Wars? Like I'm very color me curious. I'm curious. I'm
Okay.
intrigued.
I am definitely also intrigued. I mentioned my son earlier. My son is a huge anime fan, animated fan, I should say. But he also does a lot of liking of animes to the point where he is not as into Star Wars as I am. Just like I was not being into anime, so we kind of have this trade off we're doing. I'm showing him all the Star Wars stuff, and we go back and forth. And like I watched Attack on Titan with him. I watched. What else? Cyberpunk Edge Runners. We watch a little bit of Made in Abyss. Right now, we're going back and forth with Mob Psycho. So he's an anime fan. He really enjoyed the Star Wars Visions side of things, and I enjoyed getting to enjoy that. The fact that it's not canon is kind of a cool thing to be to a degree. I don't think everything has to be canon. I think it's nice to have some interesting mythos in there that you can explore that without having to worry about being tied into the overall story, especially when you're talking about different cultures' views on Star Wars or how putting cultures into Star Wars. Um, that definitely thrills me to a degree. I'm actually even more thrilled about season 2 to a degree, also not to knock anime, but the fact that we do get to see all these different animation companies from around the world: India, South Korea, UK, Ireland. Like that just sounds cool. Let me explore Star Wars in short formats. Like if I get a half an hour and I get explored into a different kind of animation I've never seen before, that's cool. What a great way to introduce an animation style that's probably not prevalent to the US as far as I'm concerned, or America or to the UK. We don't know about it as much because we don't seek this thing out. It's a great
Like
way for us.
Chilean animation. What's
No idea. I have no idea. Is there something special about that culture that specifically that culture's in their animation to bring forth? I don't know. But Star Wars, like always, is a great way to get your art across in a way that's palpable to people. You're already involved in Star Wars. We already love Star Wars. I love this idea, and it's nice to be able to sit down with this. We will break this down. If it comes out like it did the first time, I'm betting we're just going to do a single episode. We'll just break down the whole of Visions, or maybe a two-parter, depending on how it is, depending on how many episodes and how long it is. But it should be a pretty cool way to look at it. I'm excited. I don't go back to Vision season 1. I'll be honest with you. I definitely go back to more of the connectivity, but it's definitely worth a view. So. All right, moving on then to the next part. Of course, here we go set in 2023, and if some of our fellow podcasters that we listen to are correct, I know Alex Damon has posited that it's probably late July, early August would be a good. He didn't promise it. I want to put words in Alex's mouth, but he said if you're looking at schedules and how things have gone, late July or beginning of August looks good for a place where the series of Ahsoka would debut. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, we have a lot of things that are front loaded in spring. We know Ahsoka is coming out, and we do know that supposedly Skeleton Crew is supposed to come out in 2023 as well. So that's July, August sounds good. Now, of course, the synopsis we got from Ahsoka set after the fall of the Empire. Star Wars Ahsoka follows the former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano as she investigates an emerging threat to a vulnerable galaxy. Well, as a Star Wars animated fan, as a Dave Filoni fan, as a Clone Wars and Rebels fan, and as someone who really did not like Ahsoka during the Clone Wars film, but now is probably one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, I couldn't be more excited about the show.
Mm-hmm.
This is tying everything together outside of the film. We have the Filoni verse of the animation of Clone Wars and Rebels. It's obviously being tied into the Favreau Filoni side of The Mandalorian. It's Rebels 2.0 live action at this point. It feels like, I don't want to say that. I'm trying to speculate responsibly, but we do have, obviously, Sabine is there. We've talked about, there's been talk of Ezra, there's been talk of Thrawn. been talking the whole crew. Hera there's that casting of Hera. Um, I Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Mhm.
I couldn't be more excited about this. I can't. Hayden Christensen coming back. What's that going to be? What are we doing? Are we doing Force
Hayden
Ghosts?
Assance continues, baby.
Force Ghosts? Are we doing flashbacks? I've heard some wild rumors I don't really want to speculate too much about on the show. They're out there. If you look about, I would say the only thing I'll mention is it's a World Beyond Worlds. That's the rumor going around. So I don't want to say anything more than that because it's way too much rumor at this point, and I don't want to get anybody's hopes up.
That is one hell of a can of worms to open up.
Yes, exactly. But what we do know it's Rosario Dawson. We do know officially that Sabine Wren is there. We do know that when Ahsoka and Sabine left together, they were looking for Ezra, and we do know they're looking for Ezra. When we last saw Ezra, he was with Thrawn. So that's all stuff we definitively know. Let's see where this goes from there. I mean, we saw Ahsoka in Mandalorian. Sabine wasn't with her, so I kind of have this feeling that a lot of this series is probably going to take place before we actually see her in Mandalorian, like timeline wise. I think it's gonna take place a little bit before. It's kind of, I think it's gonna go forward, so it's gonna go back to us a little bit, at least for like the first episode, and maybe at the end, the 5th and 6th might convene. They might actually have a place where we go before, and then her spot in Mandalorian, her spot Book of Boba Fett. The last 2 episodes will take place after that to try to connect the whole two together as moving forward, as you were. But I cannot wait for this one. It's probably my most anticipated of the year at this point. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's definitely mine as well, especially with there's one person you didn't mention, someone who was at Celebration. He was there. Chopper came out on stage.
Of course, yes.
So when we say it's Rebels 2.0, them showcasing Chopper at Celebration, him coming, I was so worried. They bought the droid. He came out. He came wheeling out. He came so close to the edge of the stage that I got up. I was like, no, because I thought he was going to fall out. I thought he was going to come flying off the stage. But yeah, seeing Ahsoka in this time, obviously, when we first saw her as Snips in the Clone Wars movie, God, she was annoying. But now you go to Comic-Con, you go to Celebration, they have meetups with Ashley Eckstein, with everyone cosplaying as Ahsoka, and Dave Filoni himself comes along. So it's like seeing the evolution of the character of Ahsoka getting to this point where she has her own show. It's not the Clone Wars where you have Anakin and Obi-Wan there as well. It's not Rebels where you have Kanan and Ezra there as well. This is her show. This is quite possibly going to be Dave Filoni's magnum opus. This is everything that he even said, like, I shot scenes that I've had in my head for 5 years.
That's amazing.
What the hell could those be?
That's amazing to me. That's Dave Filoni. I do, not to put a damper on things, I do want to discuss one. I want to tread carefully because, again, I'm trying to avoid any negativity. There is some in the fandom that have kind of sparked a little bit of a, I don't say backlash is too strong of a word, for Filoni's continued way of, as they would say, smalling the universe by having, if it's a Filoni show, it's going to have a lot of cameos, it's going to have a lot of older characters in there. I don't know about you, but to me, bring them on as long as they fit the storyline. And to me, all of the Filoni cameos and all the Filoni characters that he has brought back have made absolute sense to come back where and when they did. I mean, there's sometimes I've seen a cameo that I didn't like. That's like, for example, the one I was bringing up from the Disney era is I didn't like
Baba, right?
Ponda Baba and Rogue One. That was the one that always threw me off. I didn't even mind 3PO and R2 and Rogue One. People didn't like that. It was like, oh, that was obvious. I'm like, yeah, it was obvious, but it was a wink to us because they had better than every one. So it was one of those things like you accept that and just chuckle and move on. But Ponda Baba and Dr. Everson just seemed like a weird thrust in there for no reason. Filoni always seems to have a reason, and like when he does bring, like, for example, Bad Batch season 1, when you saw Cut again, it was like, oh, okay, cool, I'm glad to see that, like small things like that. We have a rich galaxy of creatures and characters. Like, we should be using them when we can. It's just I will admit that some people have put that forth, and I don't want to invalidate their opinion if that's how they feel. They'd rather have a show with more new characters without the cameos. I get it, but for me, at least so far, I'm still all in on the the Filoniverse and as much connectivity tissue as we can have.
It's the popcorn. You have Andor with Tony Gilroy. That's like the what's the phrase I'm looking for? Like the cult following projects.
Right.
And then you have the Filoniverse, which is your popcorn, your big tentpole blockbuster event.
It's got
then go somewhere else for all your if you want your dark and gritty, you can go somewhere else.
And I will say, like, as big fans of Andor, we were both huge fans of Andor, loved Andor. I would say if I had any negativity to say about Andor, and it's not negative, would be that it did have kind of felt like it missed a little bit of that Star Wars adventure, that hopeful, optimistic adventure feel we always kind of tend to get from Star Wars. And when I say miss it, I actually wouldn't want that in Andor. I'm glad with what we got in Andor, but at the same time, after Andor is done, I'm happy to go back into a more normalized Star Wars adventure feel. That's what's great about Star Wars. Like I said previously, we can have Andor, and you can go right into the Bad Batch, and then go into Mandalorian and have it's all part of the same galaxy, and you can have your cake and eat it too. So I don't want to. I just wanted to mention it because I know some people have mentioned it, so I wanted to just kind of throw it out there. I'm still positive that's not going to change. It's going to take a lot to make me negative. So. And of course, we got the final film in development, or final TV news, I should say, in development for 2023. Skeleton Crew is supposed to be releasing in 2023 as well, according to this piece. Now, of course, that could mean December of 2023. We could have like one episode in 2023 and it actually goes into 2024, like Mandalorian did. Like, I'm sorry, Book of Boba Fett did. Obviously, we have those kind of late December releases. That it could exactly be what Skeleton Crew is. We don't know much about Skeleton Crew. The only synopsis we have, Star Wars Skeleton Crew, set in the New Republic era, is about a group of kids lost in the Star Wars galaxy trying to find their way home. We got that. We know Jude Law's in it. I know
acclaimed child actor Jude Law.
Child actor Jude Law. And we know that it's supposed to have like an Emblem-esque feel, a Spielbergian feel. Stranger Things,
baby.
Goonies, Stranger Things in space. Like all of this sounds great to me. I think it's going to be a fun time. If it does connect to the Mandalorian, like which it doesn't have to do. I've never seen anything say definitively it ties into Mandalorian. It does fit in that time frame, so it would make sense to a degree. Although there's a part of me would want it to stay on its own. I kind of like the fact that, for example, like the fact that the Acolyte's taking place in the High Republic era, so we're not tied to something completely different. Andor is completely different from the other TV shows at this point. So it'd be nice to see something not take place, but at the same time, I also wouldn't mind if it did. That makes sense. I like expanding this Mandoverse out, so to speak. Here's the interesting point to make. If it is tied in, if it is supposed to tie in, how old are these kids? Because I say that specifically because without knowing that, is one of these kids Jason Sindula?
Oh, didn't think of that. I believe I remember hearing something. I don't know if it was John Watts who said it. Someone said that the age range of these kids is about from like 6 to 13.
Okay.
So you got a couple of young kids and there's a few like older teenagers.
Right. Because we saw Jason at the end of Rebels, which the epilogue of Rebels took place after Return of the Jedi. And he was about that age. So in New Republic era,
probably like 15, 14,
probably close
15.
to it. So maybe that does fit that end. Just I want to speculate responsibly. I don't want to say that for sure. And quite frankly, I actually doubt it. I think that it probably will be its own thing that they do. I think if Jason Sindula will appear, it'll probably be with his mother in Ahsoka. But if it does tie in, that would be an interesting place to tie it in. Because Jason's there and somehow the crew meet up eventually with Hera, and that's how they get into the whole crew, possibly. But with that being said, I'm going to move forward until I hear more. Pretend that it's not going to happen that way. Instead, we're going to focus on the only thing we do know is Jude Law. Now, Jude Law's character, we have not gotten much out of. We got a screenshot, I believe it was, and and it had him in like some Star Warsian shirt, but it's really kind of up close. I didn't even get much even of that. I love getting. I will say the one thing about this that I want to say is I love that we're getting top level talent in Star Wars. Getting Stellan Skarsgård, for example, and Andor. Now we're getting Jude Law and Skeleton Crew. I mean, obviously, Ewan McGregor is a film star, but he was coming back, so he was. That wasn't as big. I mean, it was big in news in one way, but not big in news in this way. It's just that we get to have talent. Mary Elizabeth Winstead coming now. Rosario
John
Dawson.
Watts is a director. Like
John Watts is a director.
Look at what he's just done with Spider-Man, and now he left doing the Fantastic Four,
right,
to come do this,
right.
So it's got to be pretty special, whatever it is.
So without knowing much more, I can't really speculate much more. I will say I am definitely highly intrigued. I'm excited more for Ahsoka at this point because we just don't know enough to be too excited, and that's fine. That's very fine. So I can't wait to see more, but we'll get into that later on as it comes up. We'll definitely be breaking it down here. Without further ado, let's go into our next segment. Our next segment of the show, the meat and potatoes of this episode. We're talking Bad Batch Season 2, 2-episode premiere. We're breaking it down these categories, and let's get right into it. The first category that we are going to breaking this down, we're going to break down every episode of every show with, no matter what's going on. It is Hondo Watch.
Who wants to see Hondo's book? Talk to me.
What Hondo Watch is? It's very simple. Me and Maddie are always looking out for Hondo appearances. Does Hondo Ohnaka appear in this episode or not? Does Hondo Ohnaka make an appearance in whatever it is, Bad Batch Season 2 premiere or Mandalorian or whatever? Every episode we're looking for Hondo. And in this case,
this is not good business.
Not good business. It's
not good business at all.
This effort is no longer profitable.
Yeah. No, Hondo does not appear in Bad Batch Season premiere 1 or 2. Although there was a character that he could have been, but we'll get into that.
Yep.
It could have been. Could have been. Okay.
Wasted opportunity.
That's our one negative point of the entire show, of every show. It's a negative point of every show that Hondo's not in because we love Hondo so much here. I can't wait for Hondo to come to live action at some point. It's got to happen.
Antonio Banderas is Hondo. Form a prayer circle now.
All righty, let's get into our next segment then about the episodes. We're going to do both in one as we had a 2-part premiere.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need, Rex?
Any chance I could use you for a mission?
That's right. It is the mission briefing. Mission briefing. We're going to just talk about, briefly recap the episodes. We had 2. Well, the first one was called Spoils of War. The second one was called Ruins of War. And the quick and dirty of it, as you were, we got introduced to the Bad Batch right from the get-go, went from the first trailer appearance in the same place around that crab planet. And they're doing their adventures. We are set a couple months after Camino. After the fall of Camino, it seems like they are on the run. The Empire believes they're dead at this point, supposedly. They're doing their thing. It seems like they haven't lost a beat. Despite everything that went down, they're still the same old crew, doing jobs, being the A-team in space. And I love the fact that's where we are with them. I don't mind. I think it felt like comfort, like coming home. It was a great way to begin the episode. We do eventually get back to Sid's parlor, of course. And we are introduced to a pirate named Fee Noah. This is who we were alluding to a couple minutes ago. If we have a pirate and it's not Hondo Ohnaka, what are we doing? What are we even doing here?
It was Wanda Sykes, right, doing the voice?
It was Wanda Sykes doing the voice. So, humor aside, I'm very interested to see where we go with her. It seems like she's being set up to be a recurring character. The way they talked about her before the episode, or before, like she had a trailer appearance, and they mentioned Wanda Sykes doing the voice. You don't just get Wanda Sykes for a 2-minute moment in the first episode. So we're going to see that there. But we do get another plan in place, a big mission that Sid's going to send the crew on from intelligence given by Fee. And they're going to have the crew go to Sereno.
Right off the bat, just like, all right, you're going to Sereno. Okay. Okay.
They're gonna take a look, try to get one of Count Dooku's war chests from his castle. Talk about connectivity. That's the kind of connectivity that I mean. I love having the connectivity there. It brings targets back into the Clone Wars. It makes sense that there would be a war chest there. It makes sense that the Empire would want it. It would make sense that Sid wants it. It makes sense that the rebellion, the burgeoning rebellion, would want it. But it's great to have those locations and to have that connectivity. It was just a great idea. Of course, they go to Sereno, and the quick and dirty of that part is we have a big mission that spans the rest of this episode and the next episode, Runes of War. They run into some troopers, they run into a clone commander named Wilco, clone captain, I should say, Captain Wilco, and they have to. They also run into a Sereno resident named Romar, and they have an adventure take place that brings them through. Do they get the war chest? Do they not get the war chest? Spoilers, they don't. That's a big part of it. And then they make their escape at the end. But that's the general idea. That's the general mission briefing. We're going to go a little bit deeper as we move on. What are your overall thoughts before we get to end actual spoiler territory? Break it down.
The thing I loved was like this was very Indiana Jones. Right from the off. This episode felt very Indiana Jones to me. And the overall feeling I got of the episode was this was Palpatine clearing the chessboard after he got checkmate. But he doesn't know that we're about to go best 2 out of 3. He's just like, okay, checkmate, clear the board, we're done. But there's still a couple of pawns laying on the table. They're like, no, we're still here. New game, let's go.
I love it. Yeah.
It's on both sides because we get there and they're like, oh, what happened here? Oh, it's an aerial bombardment. Same on Camino. Republic territory, Separatist territory. Doesn't matter. To Palpatine, it doesn't matter what side it was. It was all getting him to his end game. Like everything was minuscule to him.
Mm-hmm.
So this is him just being like, whoop, done with all that now. Let's move on.
I like that. I do like the whole idea that we take place there. I mean, obviously, Bad Batch made some great steps forward with their character development throughout the season. We ended on Camino with that moment with Crosshair, who does not appear in these first 2 episodes, which was I was kind of surprised to a degree, but I shouldn't be because we had a big moment with Crosshair at the end. We know Crosshair. We left him on Camino that he was heading back towards the Empire. We do know from the trailer that he does make it back to the Empire at some point. Maybe he's not back yet, which is why you asked me a question, which we'll talk about a little bit. Actually, you asked me a question in your DM that I want to break down a little bit. But we left off with this great character development where Crosshair, we learn that Crosshair does not have the chip anymore, reportedly, and he still chose the Empire. So there we are with a group of family which has lost one of their brothers to the Empire, and they're moving forward. It seems like it's a good way for them to move forward is to kind of get back out of that horse and do what they do best. And it's great seeing Omega really be a part of the team now. She's definitely not just the kid anymore. I mean, she's definitely still a kid, but she's left behind in the beginning part of the thing with Tech and the ship. But she's as trusted of a character now as any of the brothers are. And I like seeing that. It's a good step forward for them. I did love seeing Sereno. I love the use of a clone captain with the regular TK troops, as we had talked about at that point. And I did love seeing the action-packed sequences we had. But this is really, the whole episode to me was more about, like, as for all the action that took place, this was a episode about people, about family. And what the Bad Batch really does best for me is taking a look at an inner look at the Empire, how it works, and how it's affecting everyone else. Sid, who mentions that, you know what, the Empire's getting tougher. I'm not going to be here very much longer. The Empire's going to come to me and take us down. Then you're out of work. How they're affecting the relationship between the Bad Batch themselves. Some of my favorite moments were the Hunter Echo moments. Hunter, this reluctant leader. This, he's like the leader the whole time, but he always seems to have this something holding him back. His main goal is to keep his crew together, to keep his family together. The other side, you have Echo, who is much more in the Rex line of things. He wants to be doing more. He wants to be doing more every time, and there's going to be I feel like this is setting up this very nice like little dynamic between the two, where we're going to see this kind of escalate a little bit. Where's the Bad Batch going to fall out? Are the Bad Batch going to eventually help out the rebellion more, which I think will happen. I think that's where it's going to place. But I think they're going to have to drag Hunter along with it, because Hunter isn't really all in on the whole thing. I like that as a dynamic, and that speaks to what this episode does, what these episodes do. We're getting a dynamic of this crew. We also get to see how citizens were treated. Romar, for example, I loved the character of Romar. He wasn't like anything completely immemorable. It wasn't like, it could have been something stupid like, oh, it was Count Dooku's cousin, or it was something like that. No, it's just an A1 normal citizen of Sereno who was a part of a separatist planet. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Mina Bonteri episodes of Clone Wars, where we actually saw the separatists as just people of the galaxy. Outside of the Dooku and Grievous of it all, there were actually real people involved. So while there's a ton of action to keep us entertained with the pew pews, and there was a lot of it, there are a lot of fun pew pew moments. Definitely was more about the interconnectivity of people, family, relationships, and the Empire. And I think that's what Bad Batch is at its best, really. So.
I love that. People would have to remember as well is these clones came from Django. Django asked for an unaltered clone so he could be a father. So there is that instinct in the clones to be a father, and we're seeing that side of Django come out through Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But Echo was, and this is something I'm going to bring up again later, Echo wasn't advanced like those guys. He's a reg. He's trained to be a soldier.
Right.
But I love that in this episode, Echo had some really big moments, because I felt like my main criticism of season 1 was that they kind of like shoved him under the rug a little bit. But I feel like this season, he could very well be the one to kind of goad Hunter to be like, hey, come on, get up. We gotta get back to work. We gotta get back to doing what we do best.
Right. I agree. It's kind of, you're not the only one to say that, and I kind of agree with you. Echo was a little overlooked a little bit last season. It's kind of tough. I don't blame the Bad Batch show or creators. It's tough when you have like a 25-minute show for 16 episodes, and you have 5-6 characters you have to really develop. And you have a whole crew to develop, including Crosshair, right? To get developed. So some are going to obviously shine more than others. But it does look like they might have noticed that Echo was a little bit short-shifted last season as well, comparatively. So I think we agree we're going to get more Echo this year. And you know what? I think we should just move on real quick, because that's what we should talk about. Our next segment, The Bachelor.
I was hoping for the whole squad, but you'll do.
This is the category where we actually just talk about which was our favorite character of the episodes. And for that first episode, for Spoils of War, Echo was my favorite character by far. Echo had great moments. That speech he made with Hunter, where he broke it down, it showcased exactly where he was, exactly where he's going to be, where it put him on the map moving forward. I like him as it's almost tough to remember. Or not, I don't know if tough is the right word, but it's almost strange to remember he is kind of the outsider of the crew. I mean, he's a brother by now, but like he didn't begin as one. He was the first episode of the Bad Batch in the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch arc in the Clone Wars. They found him and rescued him, and he kind of tagged along with them at the end. Now, by now, he is definitely one of the crew, but like you said, he does have a much different outlook of things comparatively. He's much closer to the Regs. He's much closer to Rex. So giving him that opportunity to be, he is kind of going to be the Rex of Bad Batch, so to speak. He's going to be the guy who is all about loyalty to doing the right thing, whether or not doing the right thing for everybody, not just for themselves. Whereas Hunter is about doing the right thing for the Bad Batch. And that's not necessarily bad or even selfish or even evil anyway. It's not like I'm saying Hunter's a bad dude. I think that just Hunter has slightly different priorities, and that's okay. That's what makes it a fun series to watch to me. So who's your Bachelor of episode 1?
My Bachelor of episode 1, and I know I spoke very highly of Echo, mine's Tech.
Okay,
Tick. Because I want to go around. I think Tech is the biggest unintentional comedian in definitely animated Star Wars, but maybe Star Wars. You have like the moment at the start where they're like, why is Omega hanging out from the side of the ship? Oh, it's a unintentional study break. I'm just like, wait, what? And like maybe it's because I'm British, but I love his dry humor and just like the sharpness of his wit. It's just like he doesn't say much, but when he cuts in, like some of the joke, I know they're not intended to be jokes, but some of the things he says are really, really funny. But then you have the moment with I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he has that line where he sees the in fact, no, I'm going to save that for the quotable, because something that's far cooler is the fact that he took on an entire squad of TK troopers with a broken leg. They literally got their asses kicked by a one-legged man.
Literally, absolutely.
So he went from being the tech guy, the geek, as it were, to taking out a whole squad of troopers by himself, essentially.
Yeah, I will throw it. I got to push back a little bit. That was more in the second episode, but I'll give you that. I'll grant you, which is why, here's a spoiler. That's my bachelor for the second episode was Tech. Exactly the same reason, because I like Tech more about what he does in the second half. Although I will throw you a bone as well. That the first episode, one of the favorite parts from Tech was the Fee flirting with him and him like, totally fumbling the ball. Well, yeah, I came to the technical jargon about the chromatics around are always the same. Okay, great. Again, unintentional comedian. He's funny as hell that way.
Tech, you had it. It was right there in front. He fumbled the ball big time.
He is another one who kind of like Echo. I felt a little bit short shifted last season. He was just kind of like the guy in the chair. He had some moments, and there's some moments of learning, but I think he's going to get a little bit of a boost also this year. And I'd like to see it if things go where they're going. If these two episodes are anything to go by. I mean, I remember last season he had a few moments where like he got his tech side of things, his knowledgeable side of things challenged, and he had to stop and think. I remember off the top of my head, one of my favorite moments from the first season was when we saw Little Hera, and Little Hera tells Omega how to fly. And this is about feeling more than thing. And Tech's like, what are you talking about? What? What are you talking about? Because you can't even fathom that. But it made him stop and think about this a little bit. And you get that a little bit today too in the second episode, which is where I'll go for that. That's why he's my second in the second, because one of my favorite moments of the second episode was his conversation with Romar. And he stopped and think about that. He had to stop and think about things. He's always learning. That's the good thing about Tech. He's always learning. He doesn't have much in the way of emotions. He's very logical. He's the logical one. He's the rational one. He does have that heart in there, but you got to hit the right way for him to make him access it, to access that part of his system, so to speak.
He has to find that file in his brain.
Exactly, that's what it is. So I loved that aspect of it too. So that's why Tech was my favorite part of the second episode, as well. So how about you for the second episode?
I got to go the same for that same reason. I think it's very telling to see. And it's kind of like a movie you hate in Equilibrium, in that seeing him kind of the what he called a separatist archive is a archive of culture, of music, of art. He just sees it as something like, oh, I want to crack into that. And the guy's just like, no, this is what's left of my people. This is what's left of my way of life. And Tech is straight away like, oh, let me just break into it. And he's like, oh, wait, I never thought of it that way. Which is something so like relevant to the real world. You can be the smartest person in the room, but you can also be the dumbest.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on then to our next segment for both episodes. We call this one I Spec.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here.
We are talking about our favorite quotes from the episodes. This will be a quick segment. I got 2 quotes, one from each episode. It's funny, sometimes the one-liners, the one that get you, that you remember, even if they're not really, I don't know, worthy is that the right word. But I have one for each. The first episode was more of a humorous one. The second one was more of a serious one. The first one was Wrecker in the first episode. After he shoots the stormtrooper while he's on Sereno, They're in the container. He shoots him. Looks back. I did it quietly. So Wrecker.
I love
I
Wreck.
love it.
He's such a gem.
He's the big humor of the series and the humor side of the episode as well. Same on Wrecker. He's actually I think my wife's favorite as well. Because every time he speaks, it makes me chuckle. If you have a good time, which is what you need to do. The second episode, I'll just throw it in there, and then you can go back and talk about your 2 quotes. It was from that conversation between Tech and Romar when Romar says, "Not separatist, Serenian. It did exist before the war, you know." And it was one of those times where, again, like I said, like Tech's almost like the audience in that point, because even though I blame Tech or claim Tech that can't access that emotional side of things, I think we're guilty as an audience too. We just saw separatists as battle droids and as Dooku and Grievous and Palpatine, for example. The separatists were made up of real people, and seeing a Serenian from Sereno do that, have toys for his kids that he doesn't have anymore. I don't know where they are. I don't know if they're passed. I don't know if they've moved out. He's definitely an older gentleman at that point. But he made you stop and think. We did exist before the war, you know, and they exist now after the war is over. There's no separatists anymore. So technically speaking, we should get more separatists in the rebellion, and that dynamic is kind of fascinating to me. Like, here we are going to have clones like Rex side by side with someone who was a separatist. They're both fighting the same thing now. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. So that one line that stopped and made Tech think, stopped and made me think as well.
Yeah. I think I'll go backwards because I'll go through episode 2 to 1 because that was my pick as well for episode 2. It really made you stop and think that, like I said earlier, like we may have seen 2 sides in the war. We may have seen the Republic and the Separatists, but overall, it didn't matter. They were all getting played by the same chess master. Like everyone was getting played the entire time, no matter what side you were on. It was the end result for both sides.
Yes.
And the first one kind of ties into that was Sid saying, you know, I'm not going to be here for much longer.
Yeah.
The Empire is closing in on everyone. Like, no one is safe. Not even to the extent of Mon Mothma. Like, you could be a criminal working in the underworld, or you could be a senator in the Imperial Senate. You are not safe.
Damn. I like that. I do like that a lot. Yeah, no, I felt exactly the same way. Because the animated side of things, it gets talked about because it's more of a kid-like whatever. And it starts out that way sometimes and has moments of that. Obviously, it's a younger audience, but it has these moments like that where it kind of kicks you in the gut. It's almost like you think Bad Batch is going to be around forever. You know, the Clone Wars is going to be around forever. The Rebel Group is going to be around forever. But the stories end, the stories change. And Sid saying that's kind of a sobering thought. Like, yeah, you know what? Sid understands it's her mortality. She's got a limited lifespan at this point, a limited shelf life. She's going to have to find somewhere else to do because quite frankly, she isn't going to be around. The Empire is going to be shutting her down. She helped the Jedi out. She knows that if the clones know that, the clones are at the Empire side now, well, it's going to happen. So it's kind of a sobering thought. I like a little injection of momentarily sobering us up for a moment. I mean, it's usually offset by a Wrecker moment, which makes it a little more palatable, which I like.
Yes, ma'am. When he's carrying the case out, he just goes, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. A lot of grunting from Rex. I love that. All right, let's move on then. Let's go on to the next segment we have, which is put that in your holocron and snoke it.
Do you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
This is the segment where we talk about moments of lore, things that we add from the different canon, the connectivity as we were, little pieces of it. I think stuff that we'd like to see more of. Not that we'd like to see more of, that's a different category, but stuff that we got to see. They're like, oh, this is kind of a cool little piece, not necessarily an Easter egg. It could be an Easter egg if you want, whatever you want to talk about. But let's talk about those things that have connectivity to it. And for me, the first episode was Count Dooku's Palace. I love that we got to return to Count Dooku's Palace, broken, beaten down. We got the moment where we talked about Sereno. We got the Imperial bombardment, just like Camino did. And you go in there, it's got the glass broken. We still have that lift, though. You still have the lift that they get to go down eventually. Seeing that in a state now, I always love the updates as we were. You get to a place in one show, different show a little later on, you get to say, oh, we're back there. Let's see how this place is now. And it's kind of something that we do in Star Wars. You always revisit these places we know and see them at different timelines. So for the first episode, getting to see Count Dooku's palace was definitely a highlight for me. What about you?
I think mine would be the Serrano stuff mixed with the Duke stuff. I got to shout out Zach the Maker real quick because he reminded me that, because I said that I thought it was cool that Count Dooku had a super secret elevator built into the floor behind a desk like a Bond villain, to which he reminded me, obviously, he played Scaramanga.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was like a little
nod, so to speak. I get that. Yeah.
And then you see Dooku was the one that funded the separatist movement. And it makes me think, did Palpatine target Dooku because he knew that Dooku came from money? And that just makes his fall from the Jedi Order even more tragic.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if Palpatine saw him and thought, oh, Dooku's got a bit of money, if I can pull him away from the Jedi, he can fund the separatists.
Yeah, you know what?
It's just like, oh, that makes. And then you think about Yaddle's death. Spoiler alert. It just makes it even worse because, again, Palpatine's there pulling the strings.
Palpatine's one of the greatest villains in the history of villains. He does things. He is the perfect Phantom Menace, as it were, behind the scenes of everything. God, he's powerful. The funny thing is about him, he's even when he is there in the action side of things, he can handle his own too. His battle with Maul and Savage during the Clone Wars is right.
He got lucky.
Palpatine is very powerful, very powerful. So.
It was just not that, like, knowing that he funded the separatist movement, and it was like, was that by design?
Okay. So for the second episode, the one thing I wanted to know more of, as we got to hear from Captain Wilco in the first, and then Captain Wilco appears in the second. I love the idea of exploring more about where the clones are, the surviving clones are, because Rex and Cody aren't the only ones that survive. Like, we know Cody's going to appear. We know Rex has obviously appeared. We know we get to see Wolf and Gregor and Rebels lore later on, but there's some of the lesser known clones from the Clone Wars series that must have gotten out. I want to see where they are at this point. Are they as in tune? Are they still like on board like Jesse was? Like, they're still all full on Empire, full on everything else? Are they more questioning things like Wilco did, like
Hauser, pretty boy Hauser. Is he safe? Is he all right?
Yeah, right. I hope so. I hope we can see him again. That's exactly my plans. I want to see, like, so. And I remember the reason why I mentioned this at one point. Like, when I heard Wilco, I was like, Wilco, that name sounds familiar. Do we know Wilco? Because I got to admit, sometimes, there's so many clones in the Clone Wars. And there were so many clones that had like 1 or 2 episodes. I kind of was like, every once in a while when a clone would return and I had to hear her name, like, wait, is that one we know? Which one was that? Oh, okay. I look back and no, this one was not. Wilco wasn't. I was, damn, I thought Wilco was in one before. He wasn't. But just like Hauser wasn't. I like getting new characters. Absolutely. I always like getting new characters. But it'd be interesting to see if we can get some return from some of the other ones who weren't, who did make it out that we know a little bit above. Let's see where they are. What about your second episode?
Mine would be exactly the same. It was anytime that they show us a clone's face, like when they take the mask off, they're doing it deliberately to make them more human. Of course they are human, but like, they want us to feel like they are a clone more importance. And then obviously you get that son of a gun Rampart shooting him in the back.
One of my favorite moments of the whole show. I will say, I gotta interject real quick before I let you finish. Rampart almost was my favorite character of the second episode, even though he's only on for 3 minutes, because he just made everything go. I still went, yeah, that's Snake. It's so good to see. But he opened up such a can of worms, really. But I'm sorry. So go ahead. We'll continue more of that in a little bit.
Yeah, it was just piggybacking off of what you said. Mine was exactly the same. Just like, let's see more of some of these clones and where they're at, even if they're new. Like, I'm all for new clones. Like, and it also makes you think about the clone in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, who is that? We don't know, do we?
Who was that? How did they get there?
I don't know. We don't know. But well, you know what? Let's just segue right into it then, because that actually has something to do with what I want to do. The next category we have, something we call more.
More! More!
We want to find out what we want to know more of as we are exploring this Bad Batch season 2 things. What else we want to see it get further into? I'm actually going to start with episode 2 instead of episode 1 because exactly what we're talking about with Rampart. I love the idea where Rampart says to him, "No, you're mistaken. The clones were perished into Poca City." And of course, Wilco is like, "I am not going to falsify an official report." Okay, I will, and shoots him dead. So dirty, so deep, so dank. But it opened up this can of worms because now Rampart is saying that Tarkin can't find out the clones have survived. So all of a sudden, this becomes a totally different ball game for me because the Empire thinks they're dead, and now Rampart is actually kind of helping them because he is going to try to make everybody else still think they're dead. Because Rampart is he going to confide into anybody, or is he going to keep this thing? But it had to do with what you wrote me. Also, you wrote to me, did Crosshair not tell Rampart that the clones that the Order 6 survived, or 99 survived rather? I don't know. I mean, I did think about it for a moment, and I thought, well, technically speaking, we haven't seen it yet. We don't know if Crosshair has made it back to the Empire yet because we left him on Tapoka. We don't know exactly how he got off. That's why it was kind of intimated at one point that he was going to wait for the Imperial scouts to come, and maybe he got off that way. But we don't know. So maybe that's the answer, that Crosshair hasn't made it back yet. But if he has, is this a drop in the bucket of Crosshair's redemption? Does he, because he had those moments in the finale of season 1 where you're like, is he going to turn? No, he's not. He got kind of teasing, but he said no. He kind of went back and forth a little bit, but he did share some powerful moments with Omega, with Hunter, where he saved the day, gave them that episode was phenomenal. I love rewatching those episodes. Where Crosshair is a very strong, is a very big question mark for me, because he's still working with the Empire. He wants to work with the Empire. We've seen him in the trailer talking to Cody, still saying it's the clones that are thinking differently are traitors. I want to find out more. I got to see more what's going on there. Is Crosshair telling Rampart? Is he not telling Rampart? Does Rampart know? Is he going to help the Bad Batch survive just because he wants to keep his position? What happens when somebody else does fight? I don't know, but I'm excited about it. What about you? What about your? Let's go your second episode one, since we did that. Then we'll go back.
Mine's exactly the same. That's why I brought it up to you, and I brought it up in pretty much every Discord channel I'm in. Like, did Crosshair leave a key part of information here, or did he just not tell him? He's just like, "Hey, I'm done with them. You're done with them. You blew up Camino. Clone stuff is over with. It's just I want to move on from that part of my life. If I see them, I'll deal with them then." But it's also going to lead to, I want to know what's the fallout going to be once the clones find out what Rampart did.
Yeah. Good point. And not just Rampart. I mean, well, interestingly enough, because the Imperials we know from the original trilogy, killing an officer isn't that. I mean, Vader used to kill them by the handful every time. But that was Vader. Maybe I don't know, but it could be an interesting way to get into that. Maybe Rampart becomes that kind of person where it's that's the way the Empire is. You screw up, you're gonna get killed. Maybe that's the way it goes. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see if that's the development, or does it become something more? Maybe the clones do have their own little clone rebellion, so to speak, that gets swallowed up by Saw's partisans, or they go work for Rex or something to that effect. Maybe he has a little team. I mean, eventually we got to see the point where Rex right now is on the run. We saw him in the trailer asking about a mission. He's obviously working for the rebellion, or at least a cell of the rebellion, or a part of a rebellion, rather, so to speak. Maybe he's on his own. But we do know that when we see him in Rebels, he's with Wolf Gregor, retired at a beach at that point. How does Rex get from where he is now to where he gets to? That's another thing that could be solved by, not solved, but that could be shown in Bad Batch potentially. So we'll have to see how that goes. I mean, I'm sure Dave Filoni, I know Dave Filoni already has it in his head. He already has stuff out of his head, like where he knows exactly where everybody was and where everybody's going. and how they got there. You just gotta find the time to get it out right.
Yeah. In Filoni we trust.
Exactly. All right, real quick. We're going to go on to the first episode of More and More. I want to see real quickly for that. It was Fee, the pirate. I want to see more of the underworld now. We got Sid as the rebellion side of things. We got Fee, who seems to be more of a normal pirate, maybe not as much of a rebel sympathizer, Jedi sympathizer. Of course, that might be just me wanting to see Hondo. But I want to see more of the underworld. I want to see where the underworld is at this point compared to how is the Empire affecting the underworld now versus to how the Republic was affecting the underworld back in the day. So give me more underworld in Bad Batch.
Same. The same, but I also want to see where the Bad Batch got those sweet outfits from.
Oh yeah, that's
what I want to know about the change in armor. Like Omega looks a little bit older. She's starting to age a little bit more, even though it's only been a few months. She seems to have sprouted a fair bit. So I'm like, okay, what's going on there? But mainly, like, I just want to see how they got the sweet armor, because I thought, especially Hunters. I thought Hunters looked really cool, like with the paint job on the back. I thought, yeah, like nice. now they were individual before, but now it's like you know which one's which,
right? Which is cool. Besides the side of the record, who always kind of stood out. All right, let's go on to our next segment.
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
Less than 12 parsecs. So we're going to rank the episode 1 to 11, because we just go to 11 here on PLD Projects. 1 out of 11 parsecs. What do you rank the episode? We'll do one by one. And I think this is a good place we could also touch base on maybe some of our favorite moments we didn't get to mention in the categories. They actually both have the same. I actually saw this as one big episode. So they both get the same ranking for me. I'm going to give this a solid 8.5 out of 11. Great premiere. A lot of nice things drawn out there. I want to see more of something, which is good. It wasn't a perfect episode. There was some, I don't know any necessarily drawbacks were. But yeah, it was about an 8.5. One of the moments I did want to mention before we get to yours, we haven't found a way to mention yet. I loved the moment when Wrecker grabs the Separatist tank gun.
Oh, yes. I was going to bring that up. Yes.
He's give the battery pack. What for? Don't worry about it. All of a sudden,
you have the moment at the end as well where he's like crailing it, and then it turns to Omega with the eye toy that she's got. I forget what those are called. Kaleidoscope.
Yeah, kaleidoscope.
It's just like two generations both playing with their toys.
The toys, exactly. Loved that moment there. That was great. That was phenomenal. So 8.5 out of 11 for me. What about for you?
I think we're going to give it a 7.5 parsecs out of 11 because it's early days yet. It's the first 2 episodes. We still got 14 left to go.
Right.
So I know there's going to be some build. So I want to like taper my expectations down a little bit, because from what people who have seen these episodes have been saying, stuff is about to get wild. So
yeah, you're probably right. You're a smarter man than I. To probably keep it lower, that's probably true. I have heard that from a few people too. Obviously, we are not blessed to get to any screeners. We're not big enough yet to get screeners. But I would like to say I've talked to some people who have seen some of the screeners as well, and they have definitely been excited about what's upcoming. I've heard specifically that the third episode, next week's episode, has really got some cool shit. So I don't no idea. That's all I heard was that it got some cool shit. So we're gonna find out what that means next week. But yeah, I did love that. Anything else that you want to add about these episodes? Fun moments for you? No.
No, that was the one I was going to bring up. The big man with the big gun.
The big gun. I love them all together at that point. The other thing I did touch it on before, but I will touch base on again. I did love seeing Omega and Romar in the basement, where Romar was kind of teaching her to be a kid, because she's not a kid. She's never been able to be a kid. It was kind of a touching moment you got to see between families, where Romar, the older man who obviously had kids, it's just a toy. Blast it. Doesn't have to be nothing. Not everything's about Jules, and everything's about the mission. Not everything's about your kid. Be a kid. I think we're going to see a little bit of that come back into play at some points as well. I think you're going to see Omega's development kind of have its 2 steps forward, 1 step back, like 2 steps forward as a bad batcher, 1 step back where you realize she's still a kid, and finally, one last thing I will mention also is I did love the Omega Echo vibe, where Omega overheard Echo saying that obviously Echo said that we changed everything for her. We keep taking her on, totally changed her life, and she heard that, and it drove her to be impulsive, trying to totally get that war chest in the second episode that she kept lost. It was kind of like Indiana Jones on the Holy Grail when it's falling off the edge there, and she's still trying to get an Echo's like Echo playing Henry Ford Sr. there, Indiana Omega, let it go, let it go. And it's because Echo has that great moment at the end. He's like, you know what? Yes, you did. And we're not going to shirk from it. You did change our lives. You changed our lives completely. We're not the same people we are anymore, and we aren't going to live normal lives. And it's because of taking you on. But I would do it all over again because it was the right thing to do, and we love you and you're our family. So, all right, final segment before we run off here.
Premonitions.
We call this segment Force Vision. We're looking forward to the next episode and beyond if we want. I will start first with this. My Force Visions for next week and beyond is again hoping for a successful Hondo watch. But beyond that, I am excited to see more about where I'm hoping to get Crosshair. I want to see where Crosshair is, what he's doing, get his return to the Empire. Let's see where he is and what his relationship is to the Bad Batch in his mind, if nothing else. And of course, where Crosshair is coming, we also know that Cody's coming. So I'm looking forward to Cody as well. So I think we're going to get Crosshair. I think we can't go that many episodes without Crosshair. So I think we have to have Crosshair next week. That's my prediction and premonition, and I can't wait for it. So, all right, what about you? What's your Force Vision for next week?
My Force Vision, I think we're going to see the appearance in the trailer from Palpatine, because he's going to have to find a way to spin what happened on Kamino. And I'm curious to know how he's going to do it. I also want to point out, I can't wait. I know it's probably not going to happen next episode, but I can't wait for Rampart to get his ass kicked.
Interesting, yeah.
You want to try and play behind the back games with Tarkin, the man who figured out Anakin Skywalker was Darth Vader from a hunch, and you want to try and get behind that man's back? Good luck, my guy. Have fun.
All right, that's going to be next week. Hopefully, we'll be back and see how we do on that, as well as any other predictions we make for next week. So that is our show for today. I really appreciate you guys checking us out for our debut episode. This is a lot of fun. I can't wait to be back next week to talk Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 3, as well as any news that does drop. Like I said, if this is your first time here, hit that like, hit that subscribe, smash that button, leave us comments, all that good stuff. Get us going. Where can the folks find you, Mr. Gunner?
You can find me on Twitter at Matty Gunner, Instagram Matty_Gunner. You can find my band Mourner, Mourner, on all streaming platforms. And you can find me here every Thursday for Holy Snokes. And we're doing Wednesdays, aren't we? So every Wednesday here for Holy Snokes, and every Tuesday for Class Action with Mr. Paul Denuzio and our co-host, Mr. Richard Eric Jarvie.
That's right, at Paul_Denuzio on Twitter, the aforementioned Holy Snokes every week, the aforementioned Class Action every week. Also on this channel, I do Crown Jewels, where I go through the band Queen, as you can see in my hat. Favorite band of all time. I go through song by song. And also, PJ Campbell and I do a show called Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film, where we cover all sorts of films and franchises and the like. We are on the march here for subscribers on YouTube. We're marching towards 350 right now. We're going to try for a mile goal, and then eventually we'll move on to that to 500. Right now, I think we're at 339. So let's get those subscribers in. Help us out. Help us spread the mission of positivity in Star Wars. I can't wait to talk more Star Wars to you. We're going to get further and further into this. Have some special episodes planned, some bonus episodes planned already, even though we've only had one episode. Can't wait to talk about those. I have another episode coming up about something else, which I will talk about soon. But that's not now. That's next time. Until next time, of course, may the Force be with you. Always. May the Force be with you. Always.